Melissa Grant had barely stepped into the first-class cabin when the entire world seemed to freeze before her eyes, because the man sitting calmly in her seat 3A was smiling as if everything were perfectly in place. And she, just one drop away from breaking, felt her already terrible day collapsing into chaos. The frantic morning still clung to every step Melissa took as she stood at the aircraft door, breath uneven, heart-pounding makeup, barely hiding the exhaustion on her face. She had fought through a traffic jam that felt endless, sprinted through an overcrowded security line, and almost fell forward when she heard the final call, final boarding for passenger Melissa Grant. The worst day of her year. A flight she absolutely could not miss. A presentation in San Francisco that could decide her entire career. And now the last tiny thing she had held on to for comfort was being taken right in front of her. Her seat, her quiet, the one space where she could breathe after the storm. The man Evan Brooks sat there in a sharp, deep blue suit that framed his broad shoulders, his expression impossibly serene, as if he were the one who owned the entire aircraft. He took a sip of water and glanced at Melissa with a calm she could neither understand nor tolerate at this moment. Melissa exhaled sharply, trying to steady her voice, but the tension only made it sharper. "Excuse me, but you are sitting in my seat." The word slipped out like the edge of a blade, carrying every ounce of pressure she had been holding in. Evan looked up, his dark brown eyes, showing no surprise, only a quiet attention, as if he was observing her reaction more than her words. "I believe I am in the correct seat," he replied, his voice low and steady, a calm that stung even more. Melissa felt the heat rising in her cheeks. She raised her ticket. "3A. Here, this is my seat." She emphasized each syllable as if the universe might adjust itself accordingly. Evan reached into his jacket and pulled out his own ticket. "Mine says the same." The floor seemed to tilt beneath her. A flicker of confusion, then a familiar surge of frustration overwhelmed her. "Are you sure you are reading that correctly?" Her voice hardened, carrying an implication she herself did not recognize. Passengers nearby began to turn their heads. A few phones were raised. The glow of screens against the cabin ceiling told the truth she did not want to see. Being watched only made her irritation spike. She did not want to be a spectacle. But she also refused to back down. Evan remained perfectly still, a stillness that was unsettling, like someone accustomed to confrontation, someone accustomed to judgment, someone who had learned to remain calm when others thought he did not belong where he sat. Something in him felt heavier, a weight Melissa could not see, but one he recognized all too well. Flight attendant Lauren Ortiz approached, forcing a tight smile as she sensed the tension hanging in the air. "Let me check both of your tickets." Melissa handed hers over with a dramatic gesture, desperate to end this. Lauren examined them carefully, then frowned. "There appears to be a system error. You have both been assigned seat 3A. Melissa let out a short, brittle laugh. "Then is there another open seat? I booked this one 3 weeks ago." Lauren nodded. "We do have 3C available. Same row, also first class." Evan spoke gently. "I can take 3C if it helps resolve this quickly." It was a gracious offer, a clear attempt to de-escalate, but Melissa was too wound up to see it. "I am not switching," she replied, immediately startling Lauren. "I paid for this seat not to have someone else take it, and expect me to just understand." Her eyes flicked toward Evan. "He seems like he would be fine in any seat." A careless sentence, carrying far more weight than she realized. Evan did not react, but a shadow crossed his eyes, subtle yet unmistakable. Lauren bit her lip. A passenger in the row ahead lifted her phone higher. A woman in 2B leaned against her seat, watching like it was a live reality show. Everything was spiraling, but Melissa couldn't stop. Her anger from the long day, combined with unexamined biases she had never confronted, was pulling her directly into the storm. Honestly, Melissa added her voice soft, but sharp enough to cut. He does not exactly look like someone who flies first class often. Lauren froze. The cabin collectively held its breath. Evan set his glass down, and for the first time since boarding, a flicker appeared in his eyes, something Melissa couldn't interpret, a deep and familiar exhaustion. He had heard this before, more times than anyone should, and that quiet, heavy moment settled into the cabin like cold metal. That was when Marcus Hayes, the lead flight attendant, arrived after Lauren's report. He opened his mouth to ask a question, then froze the instant he recognized the man by the window. His expression changed instantly. He straightened as if standing before a general. "Mr. Brooks!" Melissa snapped her head around, startled. Marcus bowed his head slightly. "My apologies for the delay, sir. We will resolve this immediately." Melissa blinked, looking between Marcus and Evan, her confusion rising. Who is he?" Marcus inhaled, then answered with a level of formality that silenced the entire cabin. "This is Mr. Evan Brooks, Chief Executive Officer of North Star Airlines, the airline you are flying with today." One heartbeat, two heartbeats, and Melissa's entire world shattered quietly, like safety glass, clean and complete. Evan looked at her. No anger, no accusation, just the calm gaze of a man who had endured this far too many times. A gaze that made silence more painful than any reprimand. Melissa felt her skin burn, her hands turn cold, her heart dropping straight into her stomach. In that instant, she was not just facing a CEO. She was facing herself, and the storm, as she would soon learn, was only beginning. Melissa stood frozen, as if turned to stone, Marcus's words echoing in her mind like someone was replaying a scene in slow motion, one she desperately wished she could shut off. Chief Executive Officer, the Chief Executive Officer of North Star Airlines, the man she had just spoken over, dismissed and insulted with words that seemed harmless on the surface, but carried implications she could no longer deny. A rush of heat shot up her spine. She tried to breathe in, but it felt as though the entire cabin had been drained of oxygen. Meanwhile, Evan Brooks stayed exactly as he was, arms loosely folded, eyes deep and still, without a single ripple of emotion. That silence, that calm, was far more terrifying to Melissa than anger ever could be. Passengers whispered around her. Someone in the front row murmured, "Oh my God." Another voice said softly, "She is finished." A phone in the row ahead lifted slightly higher. Humiliation rose inside her hot and sharp, like ground glass scraping against her ribs. Lauren swallowed hard and glanced at Marcus. "Should we tell the captain?" Marcus shook his head, his posture still formal before Evan. "Mr. Brooks, we sincerely apologize for the inconvenience. We will resolve this immediately." Evan replied calmly, "It is fine, just a system error." His voice was gentle, almost dismissive, but for Melissa it felt like a needle pushed deeper into her shame. "It is fine. Fine for him, perhaps, but a disaster unraveling her entire world." I did not know Melissa tried to speak, but her voice fractured into the air, trembling beyond control. Evan did not respond. He simply looked at her for a brief moment, and in that gaze there was no anger, no instant judgment, only a quiet force that compelled her to confront herself. It made her see something she had never dared to acknowledge. Her carelessness had not been accidental. It had been shaped by assumptions she had never questioned. Marcus turned to Lauren, his voice turning sharp. "Move Miss Grant to seat 3C. Melissa flinched. "No." But this time, Marcus's tone held no courtesy. "This is the airline's arrangement. Please take your seat so we can continue the flight." Lauren's eyes showed clear discomfort, yet she still bowed slightly and guided Melissa toward the aisle. For the first time in years, Melissa had no words left. She could feel 30 pairs of eyes following every step she took, like harsh stage lights, stripping away her layers of practiced confidence. She sat down in seat 3C, her heart pounding so violently it made the seatbelt tremble. Her hands gripped the airline magazine until the edges wrinkled beneath her fingers. Every click of someone typing on their phone felt magnified. They are recording. They are uploading. They are watching me fall apart. The thought wrapped around her like a tightening rope. Evan reopened his documents, completely composed. But Melissa could hear her own heartbeat, louder than the engines. She knew it was not Evan who frightened her. It was herself, and the truth she had just exposed. The safety briefing began. The plane prepared for takeoff. Warm yellow cabin lights glowed gently overhead, but inside her mind everything was dark. The aircraft accelerated down the runway, and as the wheels lifted from the ground, Melissa realized something chilling her life, too, was lifting away from everything familiar, plunging into turbulence she could not control. At 35,000 feet, Melissa drew a shaky breath to steady herself. But in that exact moment, Evan turned his head slightly toward her. "You are flying to San Francisco for work." His voice was light, not defensive, not accusatory. Yet her chest tightened, as if pulled taut. "Yes," she answered, trying to hide the quiver in her voice. Evan nodded once. "This route is very busy. I check service quality here, often." Check service quality. The implication hit her instantly. He was not just the chief executive officer, he was here evaluating the experience, and she had shown him the worst version of first class. Melissa swallowed hard. I did not mean Evan did not turn his head. No need to explain. The sentence was short, soft, but to Melissa it sounded like a lock clicking shut. She lowered her gaze. She did not know whether to feel grateful that he did not scold her, or terrified because he did not need to. Shame itself was punishment enough. She looked out the window, watching the sunset wash the clouds in warm orange and gold, while inside her chest a dark storm gathered not in the sky, but on the one place far more unforgiving, the internet. She did not know it yet, but everyone in first class already knew. Evan knew. And as the plane headed west, Melissa felt one truth settle heavily over her. What had just happened was only the beginning. The phone of the passenger in row 2B lit up again. A message flashed on the screen reflected against the seat back, uploading 87%. Melissa closed her eyes. If there was ever a moment in someone's life when they wished they could disappear from the universe entirely, this was that moment. When the plane settled into cruising altitude, Melissa tried to lean back against her seat, but nothing could slow the frantic pounding in her chest. It felt as if someone was holding up a mirror and forcing her to look directly at the ugliest version of herself. And the most frightening part was that she could not deny what she saw. The soft ding, allowing electronic devices, sounded. Immediately from the row ahead, she heard a whisper. "It is done uploading. Should I post it?" Melissa froze, a cold shock running down her spine. Her mind spun with the image of her own face, tense, irritated, dripping with unconscious bias, appearing across the entire internet as the perfect example of arrogance she never even knew she carried. Meanwhile, Evan Brooks opened his tablet again, his calm almost cruel in its steadiness. He reviewed reports, the stylus tapping gently against the glass, as if there was no storm erupting beside him. But deep within those dark brown eyes was a thought Melissa could not hear, but she could feel it. Another one, the same reaction as always. Melissa glanced toward him. She wanted to say something, apologize, explain, scrape away that first impression. But her throat locked as if tied by an invisible rope. Anything she said right now would only make everything worse. Lauren approached with a tray of drinks. "Mr. Brooks." "What would you like, water?" "Thank you, Lauren." Evan's voice was low, warm, courteous. And what hurt Melissa most was that he did not treat her with even a hint of coldness. Not because he forgave her, but because what she had done was simply not important enough for him to be angry. When Lauren turned to her, the flight attendant kept a polite, professional distance. "What would you like, Ms. Grant? Just water," Melissa whispered, barely louder than a breath. Lauren moved on. Melissa knew she did not need to say a word. Lauren had seen everything. North Star crews always had to file incident reports, and Melissa was without question the biggest incident first class had witnessed since the flight began. Evan kept his eyes on his document, but he was watching Melissa from the corner of his vision, not to punish her, but because he had seen this moment of late self-awareness countless times. People who thought they had no bias until reality forced them to see the truth. Melissa tried to open the Airline magazine to distract herself, but the words blurred and danced. She could only hear the whispers coming from nearby seats. Who did she think she was talking to? Oh my God, the actual chief executive officer TikTok needs to see this. Her face, when she realized who he was, Melissa bit her lip so hard she tasted metal. She turned toward the window, desperate to stop the tears, something she never allowed to surface in public. But today, she felt herself cracking with every invisible dagger of judgment behind her. Then Evan's voice broke the silence light, but unmistakably clear. "San Francisco seems crowded this season." Melissa turned, eyes wide. Evan was still looking at his screen, not at her. His tone was not cold, not sarcastic, simply neutral, as if he was offering her a fragile bridge over the chasm she had created. Melissa stepped onto it. "Yes, I have a presentation with a major client. It is my biggest project since the beginning of the year." Evan nodded. "I hope your trip goes smoothly." That simple wish, ordinary and soft, tightened her chest painfully, because it came from the very man she had just insulted more deeply than anyone in her life. Melissa inhaled slowly. "Mr. Brooks, about earlier, Evan lifted his head. The look in his eyes held her apology in place, trapping it in her throat. He was not frowning, not judging, not cold. But in that gaze, she saw something heavier than anger, familiarity. Repetition, as if he had lived through this exact scenario hundreds of times. Evan said quietly, "There is no need to say anything further while we are on this flight." A simple sentence. But its truest translation was, "This is not the place for easy apologies." At that moment, a phone vibrated behind them, then another, then another. Someone whispered, "Oh my God, it is up already. More than 20,000 views in 10 minutes. Another voice added, "And the plane has not even landed." Melissa felt her stomach hollow out. Everything, her career, her reputation, her credibility, felt like it was plunging from 10,000 meters. She did not dare open her phone. She did not dare look at a screen. She did not dare breathe. Evan heard it all. He exhaled softly. A man like him, carrying too much for too long, felt a complicated mix of sadness, exhaustion, and understanding. But he also knew the storm out there was not created by him. It was lit by her own hands. The plane shuddered slightly, entering turbulence, and the seatbelt sign illuminated. That unsteady sway, Melissa no longer knew whether it came from the aircraft or her collapsing life. Evan placed his stylus down and closed his eyes for a moment, like someone preparing for something much larger. And Melissa, for the first time in her life, heard her own inner voice whispering with chilling clarity, "I was wrong, terribly wrong, and I'm about to pay for it." Outside the window, the sun sank slowly beyond the sea of clouds. Inside Melissa Grant, another sun was dimming, fading fast. And she had no idea that beneath those clouds, the social media storm had already exploded, far more violently than any turbulence the aircraft could encounter. As the plane began its descent, the knot of dread in Melissa's chest tightened, like an invisible hand was squeezing the breath out of her. She could no longer hear the flight attendant's announcements or the engines roaring beneath the aircraft. Everything faded under a different layer of sound, the vibrations from someone's phone, the pointed sighs from another passenger, the murmurs loaded with meaning from every direction. 300,000 views already. Someone check TikTok. My God, the hashtag GrantGate is climbing on the trends. Each word hit Melissa like a stone. She sat stiffly, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles turned white. She wanted to disappear from the cabin, from the sky, from her own skin. Evan remained still calm as a quiet lake, but Melissa no longer knew what that calm meant, whether it was exhaustion, empathy, or the absolute distance she herself had created. The plane touched down with a soft jolt. Instinctively, everyone leaned forward. Melissa lifted her head, feeling something inside her fracture like cracked glass. She knew that stepping off this plane would not just be arriving in San Francisco. It would be stepping into a future that might already be beyond saving. When the seatbelt sign chimed off, the cabin erupted like a hive. Passengers whispered, phones glowed, everyone pretending to be busy, while really trying to snap a few more photos before the video went even more viral. Lauren passed by Melissa's seat, her expression gentle but cautious, like someone stepping around thin ice. "Ms. Grant, when the door opens, please stay back for a moment. You may need to speak with ground staff." Melissa's face drained. "Am I being detained?" Lauren shook her head. "Not exactly. But with the video circulating, the airline needs to get an understanding of the situation. In other words, she would face consequences. Immediately." Melissa nodded, her voice trembling. "I understand." Meanwhile, Evan rose, pulling his luggage effortlessly. Another flight attendant, likely alerted to the situation, approached and bowed respectfully. "Mr. Brooks, we apologize again for what happened. The ground team is waiting for you." Evan simply replied, "I will speak with them later." Not a single mention of Melissa. Not a hint of blame. Not even interest. But that silence hurt more than any criticism ever could. The aircraft door opened. Light from the terminal spilled in. Passengers filed out one by one. Every step Melissa took felt like stepping on stone, while phone screens around her flashed with notifications that seemed to echo inside her skull. When she reached the end of the jet bridge, 2 airline staff members were waiting. One was a woman in a grey suit with a name badge, reading Sandra Mulligan. Beside her stood an airport security officer. "Ms. Grant," Sandra asked. Melissa pressed her lips together and nodded. "We need to speak with you about the circulating video. A private room has been prepared." Melissa swallowed the rising tightness in her throat. I am ready." But before Sandra could lead her away, a burst of camera shutters sounded. A group of passengers from the adjacent flight had recognized her. One of them said loudly, "That is her, the one who went after the chief executive officer." Melissa felt the words slice through her. The whispers followed like poison carried on the air. Her career is done. She ruined herself. If that were me, I would never show my face again. Melissa hurried after Sandra, desperate to get away from the phones pointed at her. But no matter how fast she walked, she could still feel the eyes of the world clinging to her back. Inside the small meeting room, the door shut behind them. The silence was so deep, Melissa could hear her own heartbeat thudding painfully inside her chest. Sandra opened an iPad. "Ms. Grant, are you aware this video has already reached over 600,000 views in less than 1 hour?" Melissa nodded weakly. "And you understand that the incident involved the chief executive officer of the airline," Sandra continued, voice professional, yet edged with steel. Melissa inhaled shakily. I did not know he was the chief executive officer. I was wrong. I was completely wrong." Sandra studied her for a long moment. "The airline will launch a formal investigation. Also, the press has begun reaching out. I advise you to avoid speaking to any reporters." The door burst open. A staff member hurried in, breathless. "Sandra, update the video just past 1 million views. Twitter is exploding. The hashtag NorthStarCEO is now in the top 3 nationwide." Melissa collapsed back into the chair. 1 million in 1 hour. It felt like someone had tossed her entire life into a blender and turned it to the highest setting. Sandra hesitated. "If you need to contact an attorney or a media representative, now would be the time." Melissa no longer looked at Sandra. Her vision blurred as the words on the iPad screen seemed to melt together. She could only hear her own voice echoing inside her skull, a breaking whisper filled with regret. "I cannot fix this. I destroyed my own future in 3 minutes." Elsewhere in the terminal, Evan Brooks walked through a crowd of reporters without saying a single word. But in his heart, a thought surfaced that Melissa would never hear. This incident will become far bigger than she imagines. And he was right. Because Melissa's fall was only the opening chapter, and the storm outside, the one she had unleashed, was about to pull the entire aviation industry into its center. The meeting room door closed behind the ground manager, leaving Melissa alone in the cramped space, with nothing but the steady hum of the air conditioner, a cold sound that seemed to pass straight through her chest. She could no longer tell how long she had been sitting there, whether it had been 5 minutes or 50 only, that each passing second added another layer of fear, like dust settling so thick in her lungs she could hardly breathe. Her phone vibrated once, then twice, then a third time. Not one message, but dozens. Melissa hesitated before unlocking the screen, and when it lit up, the glow felt like a verdict shining directly into her face. "Melissa, you are viral on Twitter. The company is in an emergency meeting. Blackwell wants to cancel the presentation. Are you okay?" What exactly happened? She answered no one. She opened TikTok instead, just to confirm whether her worst fear had come true. And it had. Every bit of it had. The first video, 1.4 million views. The second video, recorded from a direct angle showing her face, 600,000 views. The third video, captioned, "Woman scolds the CEO because she thought he did not look classy enough for first class," 4.7 million views. The comments poured in like a raging current. Classic white privilege. I was on that flight. She really said the line about him not looking like someone who flies first class. I froze. Fire her. Serves her right. We have seen this too many times. Melissa curled into a chair, her breath thin as a thread. She shut off the screen, but the image of herself, angry, sharp-eyed, unrestrained, stayed burned in her mind, like acid etching into glass. Her phone rang again. This time it was her company's CEO, Warren Peters. His name flashed like a red siren. Melissa reluctantly answered. "Hello, Warren." "Nay." Warren's voice was not angry. It was cold. Very cold. "Melissa, you need to come to the office as soon as you return to Chicago. No delays." "Warren, there is a misunderstanding. The video looks terrible, but it is not just that it looks terrible. 2 major clients called me. One wants to cancel a contract. One is demanding a public explanation. I have no choice but to suspend you effective immediately." Melissa stopped breathing for a moment. I understand. You should prepare a public apology. And you should also prepare for the possibility of something more serious. The call ended. Warren did not say good luck. He did not say goodbye. He simply cut her off, sharply, decisively, closing a door Melissa knew she could never reopen. She lowered her face into her hands. Her world felt like it was collapsing in chunks, like concrete, crumbling beneath her feet. But the storm was not done. The door swung open again. Sandra entered with a man in a black suit, his cold eyes assessing Melissa in a single sweep. "Ms. Grant." Sandra sat her voice soft but firm. "The airline has been informed that several reporters are gathering outside. We will escort you through a back exit to avoid unnecessary attention." Melissa blinked. "Reporters, they already know who I am." Sandra exhaled. "Your name has been shared. Someone from the flight confirmed your identity. I am sorry, but social media does not keep secrets for anyone." Melissa leaned back, her shoulders collapsing. "I did not mean to. I had a terrible day. I did not know who he was." Sandra placed a hand on the table. "This is no longer about who he was. It is about how you treated another passenger. And unfortunately, that passenger happens to be the face of the entire airline." Melissa wanted to deny it. She wanted to explain that she had not meant harm. But at this point, any explanation would be like throwing a cup of water on a wildfire. Sandra continued. "However, Mr. Brooks requested that no severe disciplinary action be taken against you." Melissa looked up sharply. He said that Sandra nodded. "He does not want you humiliated publicly." But what?" Melissa asked, her voice trembling. Sandra turned the iPad toward her. On the screen was the official Twitter statement from North Star Airlines. Official, "We condemn all discriminatory behavior and are reviewing the incident that occurred on flight NS214. North Star remains committed to respecting every passenger without exception." No mention of Melissa. But everyone knew who it referred to. Melissa felt herself shrinking, wanting to disappear into the leather chair. "We will escort you through the side exit," Sandra said, rising. Melissa stood as well, her legs shaking. Before she opened the door, Sandra paused and lowered her voice. "Miss Grant, this incident may destroy your career, but what you decide after today will determine the rest of your life." The words hit Melissa like a truth she could not escape. She turned back to look at the small room, the table, the chair, the place where she had just watched the beginning of her life unravel. 1 second later, she stepped outside. Unaware that Evan Brooks, just a few hallways away, was standing by a glass window overlooking the runway, his expression contemplative in a way Melissa would never witness. And in his mind, a single question began to form. Is this the moment to end something, or the moment to start something much bigger? He was the only one who understood that the story was not over. It had only begun to move into its next chapter, a chapter Melissa Grant could never see coming. A thin veil of clouds hung over San Francisco, like a somber scarf draped across the city, and Melissa Grant felt as though she were walking straight through that haze, cold, heavy, and uncertain. She was escorted to the parking area through a side exit of the airport, far away from the reporters gathered near the main doors like predators catching the scent of a blood. The car took her to a hotel in the center of the city. The door closed, and the sound of the tires rolling across the pavement felt like the slow drumbeat of a funeral for her own reputation. The luxurious hotel room Melissa once loved now felt like a cage locking her in the middle of a storm. As soon as the door clicked shut, her phone erupted violently with notifications. Messages, emails, LinkedIn alerts, junk mail, security warnings, all rushing in like a flood, bursting through a dam. Her hands trembled as she opened Twitter. Her name, her face, her clip everywhere. Grant Gate trending number 2 nationwide. Northstar CEO trending number 3. First class bias trending number 5. A pinned comment at the top stabbed her directly in the chest. This is why so many people of color still feel unwelcome in elite spaces. Melissa dropped the phone onto the bed and held her head. Sharp pulses behind her eyes warned of an oncoming headache, but the ache inside her heart was far worse. She forced herself to stand, walked into the bathroom, and splashed cold water on her face. The reflection in the mirror made her freeze. Dark circles under her eyes, mascara slightly smudged her face, elongated by panic and fear. She barely recognized herself. Her phone rang again. This time, it was Alicia Moore, the only black colleague Melissa had ever considered a friend, though in truth they only had lunch a few times a year. Melissa hesitated, then answered. Alicia's voice was low, steady, and cautious. "Alicia, I know it looks horrible, but—" "Not looks horrible." Alicia cut her off, her voice, calm yet sharp. "It is horrible." The words hit Melissa like a slap. "I did not mean to discriminate," she whispered. "I was just stressed, and I did not know who he was. You do not need to know who anyone is to treat them with basic respect," Alicia replied. "You know that." Melissa swallowed hard. "I was wrong. I regret it. I never thought. Melissa." Alicia's tone was slow, deliberate, each word like a nail being driven in. "You have said things before that made me uncomfortable. I let them go. I assumed you didn't mean them. But after watching that video, this is not a one-time mistake. It is a pattern." Melissa felt the world tilt like a plane hitting turbulence. She wanted to deny it. She wanted to defend herself. But she no longer had the strength to lie to herself. "I am calling Alicia," continued, "because if you truly want to make this right, this is the moment. Not to apologize out of fear for your job or fear of the internet. "Do you think I can fix this?" Melissa asked, sounding like someone standing at the edge of a cliff. Alicia sighed, neither harsh nor gentle, simply truthful. "Whether you can or not is up to you. But the only certainty is you must face yourself before asking anyone to forgive you." The call ended. Melissa sank onto the edge of the bed, her hands shaking. She realized this was the first time in her life someone had shown her exactly who she was, not through a mirror, but through the cracks she had never admitted existed. She didn't know how long she sat there before she finally stood, opened her laptop, and began searching unconscious bias. What are microaggressions? Privilege and its effects in communication. How to recognize one's own implicit bias. She read, took notes, watched interviews, watched TED Talks. She moved through the information like someone drowning, reaching for any piece of driftwood that might keep her afloat. But understanding did not arrive gently. It came like a sharp, cold jolt. She had been the type of person she always believed she was not. Every article, every example, every scenario reflected her own past behavior back at her. Asking an Asian gym employee where the towels were assuming they were staff. Thinking she was giving a compliment by telling a black co-worker they spoke professionally. Looking at a simply dressed first-class passenger and making assumptions about their income. All of it returned like shards of broken glass slicing through memory. Finally, under the soft yellow glow of the hotel room lamps, Melissa did something she never imagined she would ever do. She wrote an apology letter. Not a quick email. Not a scripted social media post. A real letter, long sincere, without excuses, without deflection, written directly to a man she wasn't sure she even deserved a response from. "Dear Mr. Brooks, I do not expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I now see myself clearly, and it is painful. I promise to change, not to save my career, but to become a better person." Melissa wrote for 3 hours, editing each sentence, erasing entire paragraphs, rewriting every thought. She wrote until her eyes burned and her hand ached. When she sent the letter to the North Star office via express courier, Melissa hoped for nothing. She did not expect forgiveness. She only hoped the man who had endured her behavior with near superhuman composure would know she was trying to step out of her own darkness. That night, Melissa lay in the dark hotel room, listening to the cars outside, feeling as though she was suspended between 2 worlds, a past full of mistakes and a future that might no longer exist. But what she didn't know was that Evan Brooks, in his upper-floor office at North Star, only a few miles away, was staring at his computer screen, replaying the video. And as the moment froze on Melissa's face, the instant she realized who he was, a quiet thought formed in his mind. Can this woman truly change? That question, small and soft, was enough to shift the trajectory of events far bigger than either of them imagined. And the fate of Melissa Grant, along with Evan's own journey toward healing, was about to collide in a way no one could have predicted. The next morning, a thin beam of pale sunlight slipped through the gap in the curtains and fell across the hotel floor like a tired streak of light. Melissa opened her eyes in a foggy, half-conscious state, her mind heavy as though someone had placed a stone on top of it. She did not want to wake up. She did not want to face the world outside. She did not want to know how many millions of views the video had reached. But her phone vibrated against the pillow. One strong buzz, then silence, then another, and another. Melissa could not bring herself to look. Every vibration felt like another stab to her dignity. Finally, she forced herself to unlock the screen. Dozens of new notifications, emails from the company, messages from colleagues, tags on Twitter. But one email made her sit up straight, from North Star Airline's office of the Chief Executive Officer. Subject regarding your letter. Melissa shot upright so fast that her heart pounded loudly in her ears. Her hand shook so badly she needed both to open the email. Miss Grant, I received and carefully read your letter. I would like to meet in person to discuss further. If you are in San Francisco, please come to the North Star office this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Ask for Ms. Maya Williams at reception. Evan Brooks. No scolding, no promise of forgiveness, no vague implications. A direct invitation. Yet the simplicity of it overwhelmed Melissa far more than any reprimand could have. She read the email 3 times, afraid she misunderstood. Then a slow, undeniable truth settled in her chest. Chief Executive Officer Evan Brooks wanted to meet her, the woman who had insulted him, dragged him into a media storm and shook the internet for 24 hours straight. Melissa stood before the bathroom mirror, staring at her pale face, messy hair, and the dark circles under her eyes. She whispered, "He really wants to meet me." She remembered Evan's eyes on the plane, calm, deep, but tired. He had not been angry. He had not overreacted. He had simply looked, as though he had seen this before, as though he had lived through situations like this too many times to still feel pain in the way other people do. That thought made Melissa ache for him. She spent the next hour preparing. Light makeup, a simple navy suit, hair neatly tied back, not trying to look beautiful. Just trying to show respect. Respect for the man she had offended more deeply than anyone else in her life. The North Star building towered above the city, its glass walls catching the sunlight like a vertical column of brightness. As Melissa stepped inside the lobby, her stomach dropped. Eyes followed her. Some recognized her. Some whispered. A few phones lifted. She forced herself to walk straight ahead, even though every step felt like crossing thin ice. "Hello, I am Melissa Grant. I have an appointment with Miss Maya Williams." Her voice was soft but clear. The receptionist hesitated briefly when she saw the name, then regained her professionalism. "Please go to the 38th floor. Ms. Williams is expecting you." The elevator rose, floor numbers blinking past. Melissa tried to breathe steadily. "When those doors open, everything will change," she told herself. One way or another. When the elevator doors slid open, a tall woman in a red suit approached. Maya Williams. She extended a hand. "Nice to meet you, Melissa." Melissa shook her hand immediately, sensing the sharp, analytical gaze of someone who had survived the center of 1,000 media storms. This woman understood exactly how serious Melissa's mistake had been. "Mr. Brooks is waiting in his office. I will take you in." Melissa followed her heartbeat, heavy and uneven. The hallway was so quiet she could hear her own footsteps tapping on the floor. Maya stopped before a large wooden door. "A small piece of advice," she said gently. "He rarely meets anyone after an incident. The fact that he asked for you means he wants to understand, not condemn you. Be honest." Melissa swallowed. "I will be honest." Maya knocked. "Mr. Brooks, Miss Grant, is here." Evan's voice came through low but clear. "Come in." When Melissa stepped inside, her breath caught. Evan Brooks stood near the large glass window, sunlight outlining his silhouette with a stark contrast that made him look like a figure from a cinematic frame. He turned. Their eyes met. Calm, steady, no hostility, but no easy warmth either. "Miss Grant," he said, his voice deep and composed, impossible to read. "Thank you for coming." Melissa faced him with both hands clasped tightly. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." Evan nodded gently and gestured toward 2 chairs. "We should sit. There is a great deal we need to discuss." As Melissa lowered herself into the chair, her heart pounded so hard it felt as though it might break through her ribs. Hundreds of thoughts swirled in her mind: apologies, explanations, remorse, promises to change, but they all scattered the moment Evan asked his first question. "Do you understand that what happened on the plane was not just between the 2 of us?" That question, small and quiet, felt like someone had opened a dark door inside her chest. A door she knew she had to walk through, even if what waited inside was a darkness she had never dared to face. And this conversation would not be a simple apology. It would be the test that determined whether Melissa Grant truly wanted to change. "Do you understand that what happened on the plane was not just about 2 people?" Evan asked again, his voice low, but never threatening. It sounded like the opening line of a professor beginning an important lecture, and Melissa, feeling like a student who had made a grave mistake, sensed she was standing before a door. She would have to open a door leading to truths she did not want to face. Melissa pressed her fingertips together to stop her hands from trembling. "I think I do. Or at least I am trying to." Evan studied her for several long seconds, his deep brown eyes fixed on her face, as if he were searching for whether she truly meant it, or was simply trying to patch up her reputation. But he said nothing yet. He stood, walked to the wall behind his desk, where several black and white photographs of men in uniform were displayed. He pointed to the first one. "This is my grandfather, Colonel Arthur Brooks, a Tuskegee airman, one of the first black fighter pilots in World War II. Melissa looked at the stern face in the photograph, the pride, the resolve, and beneath it all, a history she had never even considered when she blurted out the words, "You don't look like someone who flies first class." Evan moved to the next photo. "This is my father. It took him 7 years to earn his promotion to a commercial flight crew, even though his records were stronger than many of his colleagues." Melissa heard herself swallow. Each photograph felt like another stone dropping onto her chest, painful, yet illuminating, revealing truths she had never bothered to see. Evan turned back toward her. "Miss Grant that day, on the plane." He paused, his voice softening. "You did not say anything I have not heard before. There is no flight attendant expression I have not seen. No passenger's stare I am not familiar with." Melissa closed her eyes for a moment. He was not blaming her, but somehow that made the truth cut even deeper. "I am sorry," she whispered, but Evan lifted a hand gently to stop her. "No. If you came here today only to apologize, I would not have asked to meet you." Melissa opened her eyes, stunned. "Then what do you want from me?" Evan looked at her directly, unwavering. "I want to know whether you truly understand what happened. Not the surface, the root." The weight in the room thickened until Melissa had to swallow before she could speak. I think I reacted from pressure from exhaustion. But she paused, clenching her hands. "I have been reading a lot since last night. I understand that there are things in me, things I never realized, things that made me see you not as a passenger, but as someone who did not belong there." Evan finished for her. Melissa lowered her head, the shame burning so deeply that her throat hurt. "Yes." Silence lingered. Evan sat again across from her, his fingers interlaced. He did not rush. He did not push. He waited for her to continue. I watched documentaries on unconscious bias. I looked back at the way I treated people before Melissa's voice cracked, and I realized I have been careless, arrogant, and far more blind than I thought. Evan exhaled softly. For the first time, Melissa saw something soften in his eyes. "Ms. Grant," he said, "I do not want to see your life destroyed. I do not want the internet tearing you apart. But I also do not want you to walk away from this without learning anything real." Melissa lifted her gaze. "I have learned, and I want to make things right. Somehow, if there is still a chance." Evan nodded gently. "I believe you could do more than just make things right." Melissa blinked. "What do you mean?" Evan stood, walked to his desk, and placed a thick folder in front of her. On the cover, North Star Inclusivity Initiative, company-wide project implementation phase. Melissa flipped through the pages. A bias recognition training program, a public awareness campaign, partnerships with racial equity organizations, employee-led storytelling sessions. "I am launching this program," Evan said, "and I want you to be part of it." Melissa stiffened. "May I caused a scandal for your airline. Millions of people are attacking me." You want me to be part of an inclusivity program?" Evan held her gaze. "Because you were wrong, but you are trying to make it right. Because you saw the darkest part of yourself. Because you chose to face it." His voice deepened, clear and unwavering. "The people who grow the most from bias are not the perfect ones. They are the ones who know they are not perfect." Melissa choked up. She turned away, slightly trying to hide her reddening eyes. "I'm not sure I am the right person," she whispered. "You are the most real person for it," Evan replied immediately. "Because your story told truthfully could open more eyes than any speech ever could." Melissa said nothing for a long moment. Her hands trembled slightly against her lap. "Mr. Brooks, I am afraid. Truly afraid. I am afraid I will make another mistake." Evan stepped forward, standing beside the desk, sunlight framing his face. "Ms. Grant?" he said gently but firmly. "Fear is always the first step toward change. What matters is what you choose to do next." A soft breeze nudged the office door, as if urging Melissa toward her decision. "Then where do you want me to begin?" Her voice still trembled, but her eyes were lit with something new, something alive. Evan handed her another page. "By sharing your entire journey from the mistake to the shock to the storm, to the moment you faced yourself, we will use that story as part of the campaign. A real story. A real lesson." Melissa gripped the documents tightly, fear and hope mixed inside her like something powerful being forged. "I will do it," she said. "Not to repair my reputation, but because I owe a lot of people more than an apology. I owe them change." Evan nodded. "Then we begin." And in that moment, in the high-floor office, bathed in the San Francisco afternoon light, a new chapter opened. Not a chapter of collapse, but a chapter of rebirth. Melissa had no idea that her story and the journey she was about to take would reshape her entire life and alter the course of North Star Airlines. More than that, it would shift the perspective of a whole community, standing on the line between judgment and understanding. And Evan Brooks, a man who had endured prejudice his whole life, had just given her a chance he had never given anyone else. That afternoon, after leaving Evan Brooks's office, Melissa stepped into the 38th floor hallway, like someone emerging from a strange dream, half haunting and half awakening. She stood by the glass railing, looking down at the busy streets of San Francisco, while inside her chest everything felt unsettled, like the surface of a lake, just stirred by wind. The fear was still there, but woven into it was something new, a small, trembling, determined spark of hope. Maya Williams appeared behind her, her voice soft but sharp in the way only someone accustomed to handling high-tension moments could manage. "Ms. Grant, we will need to schedule an orientation session for you. But first I want to ask you something." Melissa turned anxious. "Please go ahead. Are you sure you want to do this? When your story goes public, there will be strong reactions. From both sides." Melissa inhaled, her chest tightening, with the truth she knew could only be answered one way. "I am not afraid of the reactions anymore. I am afraid of not changing." Maya paused for a moment, then nodded, a rare gesture of acknowledgement. "All right. I will walk this with you." 2 weeks later, Melissa returned to Chicago to pack her belongings. Her apartment was filled with a hollow silence. The vase she refreshed every week now held wilted flowers. The work schedule pinned to the fridge still listed the pitch meeting with the client she would never get to see. An email from her former company's human resources arrived just as she folded a shirt. "Your resignation has been accepted. We wish you luck." No encouragement, no compassion. Just a clean final period. Melissa closed her laptop and sank into the chair, burying her face in her hands. 14 years of her career collapsed in the span of 3 minutes on an airplane, and she had no one to blame but herself. Her phone buzzed a message from Alicia. "Are you okay? If you are not, that is normal. But do not let yourself sink too far. Keep learning. No one changes overnight." Melissa stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. "Thank you. You are the only person speaking to me the way I need to hear, not the way I want to hear." A minute later, Alicia responded. "That is what a real friend does. I am here." Melissa pressed her lips together. The words did not magically make everything hurt less, but they gave her a reason to stand. 1 week later, Melissa flew to Atlanta, home to North Star's headquarters and the center of the Inclusivity Initiative. This time, she did not sit in first class, not in business class. Melissa chose a middle seat in economy as a reminder that her life was starting over from the ground up. On the plane, no one mentioned the viral video, at least not directly. A woman stared a little too long before whispering to her companion, "Is that?" But Melissa had learned to meet such moments with a small, steady smile. When the plane landed, she went straight to North Star for her scheduled meeting. Maya led her into a large conference room where about 8 people were waiting: communications experts, DEI advisors, a psychologist, and a team from customer experience. The room fell silent the moment Melissa stepped in. Some recognized her. Others said nothing, but their eyes revealed curiosity, caution, and doubt in equal measure. Maya began. "This is Melissa Grant. She will join the pilot phase of our Real Story initiative, where we share genuine mistakes and the journey of relearning from scratch." One of the DEI specialists, an older man with salt and pepper hair, looked at Melissa. "Are you ready to become a living example, knowing that many people may continue criticizing you?" Melissa inhaled deeply. "I am not fully ready, but I am brave enough to start." He nodded. A good answer. The meeting lasted 3 hours. Melissa had to recount her entire journey, without sugarcoating, without defending herself. Every statement was examined, every emotion unpacked. At moments, she felt stripped bare like someone peeling away her last layer of skin, but she did not retreat. Then the door opened. Evan walked in. The room fell still. The energy shifted, as though the air had changed direction. He looked at Melissa, his gaze no longer distant or angry, but searching, weighing whether she truly meant everything she claimed. "Ms. Grant," Evan said, "I just reviewed the first draft of your recorded story. Before we proceed, I need to ask you something." Melissa stood instinctively. "Please ask." Evan tilted his head slightly, his voice low. "Are you doing this to repair your reputation, or to repair yourself?" Melissa did not blink. "Both. But if I must choose, I choose to repair myself." Maya looked toward Evan, waiting. The entire room held its breath. Evan nodded slowly. An honest answer. He placed a hand on the table and leaned slightly forward. "But repairing yourself is not enough. I want to see how you turn your mistake into something meaningful. I want to see you use your own error to help others avoid repeating it. Are you willing to do that?" Melissa felt her chest tighten, not from fear, but from being offered a chance with real weight. "I am willing." Evan handed her a folder. Then starting next week, you will work with the research and marketing teams to build the campaign, look back and move forward. You will appear in the opening video." The room went silent. Melissa whispered, "I will appear publicly about that incident." "Yes," Evan replied. Not as someone being condemned, but as someone who is changing. A surge of emotion moved through Melissa, fear, gratitude, and a flicker of light she thought she had lost long ago. Evan continued, "Ms. Grant, this may be the final chapter of your old career, but it may also be the first chapter of something far bigger." And in that moment, clear, powerful, and grounding, Melissa knew she had stepped onto the threshold of something new, not just for herself, but for everyone who would hear her story. And her journey of rebirth was about to truly begin. The fifth-floor studio hall of North Star headquarters glowed under bright screens, studio lights, and a full production crew preparing for the first filming session of the Look Back and Move Forward campaign. Melissa stood backstage with her hand pressed against her chest to steady her breathing, but her heart pounded so hard it felt ready to tear through her shirt. Not because she feared the camera, not because she feared judgment, but because she knew this moment, the moment she would look straight into the lens and speak. Her truth would be seen by millions, and it would determine whether they saw her as someone making excuses or someone choosing to step out of her own darkness. Evan appeared beside her quietly, as if he had a natural instinct for arriving the instant a person needed grounding. He did not speak right away. He simply stood near her for a few seconds, letting her feel the calm he carried. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. Melissa exhaled shakily. "I think I am, but my stomach says otherwise." Evan let out a faint chuckle, a small and rare smile, but enough to melt part of the weight pressing on her. "I once defended a report in front of the Advisory Council in Washington. That was far more terrifying than a camera." "Did you win?" Melissa asked. "I did," Evan replied, but only after I spoke the truth about what I had lived through. People do not trust a polished mask. People trust a real person. The words landed on Melissa like a gentle touch on a wound, not opening it further, but helping her realize healing was possible. "I do not want to ruin this chance," she said quietly. "My whole life, I thought I was a good person. But the truth is, I had just never been forced to confront the parts of me I didn't want to see." Evan watched her longer than usual, as if choosing his next words with care. Some people know they have privilege. Some people use it poorly. Some pretend it does not exist. But very few are willing to relearn themselves from the beginning. You are doing something many would never dare. Melissa lowered her gaze, unsure whether his words were comfort or a warning that the road ahead would be harder than she imagined. Maya stepped up, holding a stack of papers. "Are we ready? Cameras are rolling in a minute." Evan nodded. Maya looked at Melissa, her sharp gaze softening slightly. "Do not think about millions of people. Think about the first person who will hear your story and learn something because of it." Melissa pressed her lips together. "I will try." The filming began. The lights illuminated Melissa's face. Everything around her faded until only the camera remained, watching her with silent, unwavering honesty. The director's voice echoed, 3, 2, 1, action. Melissa inhaled deeply. Her chest tightened. Then she began. "That day on flight, NS-214, I said things I still cannot understand why I said." Her voice wavered but did not break. "I lost my temper. I assumed I had the right to judge the person in front of me because I thought I knew better. And I was wrong. I was wrong about the man sitting across from me. Wrong about the way I viewed the world, and worse, I was wrong about who I thought I was." The room was silent. Maya watched with folded arms, and Evan stood behind the crew, his eyes fixed on every word. "I thought I was a good person, but I acted like someone carrying biases I had never cared to examine." Tears formed, shimmering but not falling. Melissa smiled faintly through the ache. "I am not telling this story to ask for sympathy. I am telling it so people know that change is real, and I am standing at the very beginning of that change." When she finished, the director said, "Perfect. Hold that emotion. We will shoot from another angle." Evan approached and placed a tissue on the table in front of her. "You did well." "Do you really think so?" Melissa asked softly, afraid her hope was too fragile. "I do," Evan said. "Not because you were perfect, but because you were honest." The next 3 weeks were filled with work Melissa never imagined herself doing, attending workshops with frontline employees, listening to deeply personal experiences from people who had faced discrimination, meeting with DEI experts and campaign strategists, and answering difficult questions about her own mistakes. Some moments were uncomfortable. One employee asked, "Honestly, are you sure you will not do something like that again?" Another said bluntly, "I have met people like you. They apologize and then slip right back to the same behavior." Melissa did not dodge. She did not excuse. She did not beg for grace. She replied, "I cannot promise perfection. But I can promise I will watch myself every single day." And something unexpected happened. People slowly began to believe her. Not because of what she said, but because of how she listened with humility she had never shown before. The campaign launch day arrived. The main hall of North Star was packed. Press, partners, employees, media. Evan took the stage first. He spoke about the importance of the initiative, but his eyes often drifted to Melissa in the front row. When we say change, we are not talking about systems or numbers. We are talking about people. And change begins with one person willing to face their own mistakes. He invited Melissa to the stage. The lights hit her. Hundreds of faces turned toward her. Melissa inhaled, knowing this moment could either destroy what remained of her image or transform it. She shared her story slowly, truthfully, without avoiding the shameful parts. When she finished, the hall went quiet, and then applause. Not explosive, but long, steady, sincere. The sound of people acknowledging courage over pride. Evan stood beside her, seeing her not as a villain or a victim, but as someone stepping through the doorway of real change. After the event, when the hall had mostly emptied, Evan walked up to Melissa. "You did something most people would never do, and you did it better than anyone expected." Melissa smiled, emotions swelling but steady. "I still have a lot to learn." "And you will learn," Evan said, "because you want to." He handed her a new folder. "This is a formal offer. Director of Inclusive Communications full-time at North Star. If you want it, this can be your new beginning." Melissa opened the folder and saw the title printed clearly on the first page. Her heart trembled. "You trust me that much," she whispered. Evan replied with a line she knew she would carry forever. "I do not trust perfect people. I trust people who choose to change." Melissa nodded, small but firm, like a lock snapping into place. "I accept." And in that moment she understood her mistake had destroyed her old path, but her willingness to face it fully had opened a new one, stronger than anything she ever imagined. Melissa Grant's journey didn't end here. It had only just begun, not as a quest to salvage her reputation, but as a mission to become part of true change. A mission that Evan Brooks, the man who had seen both her darkest side and her potential, had opened the door for. From the perspective of experts in behavioral science and organizational management, Melissa Grant's journey reveals an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the worst moments in our lives become the doorway to our deepest growth. Her mistake exposed layers of unconscious bias that many people carry without ever realizing it. But what makes her story different is the way she faced it, not with denial or excuses, but by choosing to relearn herself from the ground up and turning shame into a force that helps others see themselves more clearly. If this story resonates with you, hit like and subscribe to continue following powerful journeys of awakening. And before you go, leave a short comment with one simple phrase: "Change now."